Alright kids, who wants to go back in time to 1998? We had spiked hair with frosted tips, facial piercings, soul patches, low-slung denim jeans and wallet chains, flame tattoos, drawing flame tattoos on your arms because you were too young to get a real tattoo, or maybe that was just me. Bands such as Korn, Deftones, System of a Down, Static X, Power Man 5000, White Zombie, drawing that weird S-shaped thing that everyone was drawing on their desks in school. It was all new metal and making fun of NSYNC and being thoroughly, totally extreme and edgy. The state of PC gaming was no different. We had releases such as Duke Caribbean, Jedi Knight Mysteries of the Sith, Hexen 2 Portal of Pravis, both Quake 2 mission packs, Shogo, Klingon Honor Guard, Trespasser, Blood 2, Extreme fucking Paint Brawl, and Unreal. And Half-Life, I guess. It's hard to overstate just how much the genre was booming left and right, with publishers throwing money at creative powerhouses to pump out radical new games running on extreme new technology that was pushing the bounds of what then current PCs could handle. It was game after game displaying the latest and greatest in colored lighting and 3D engines, and maybe a lot, of those games haven't aged well by today's standards. But let me tell you what, kids, at the time, us gamers were salivating over screenshots, game releases, month after month of PC Gamer covering new hot shit that all felt like it was reaching higher, further, and faster than previous FPS titles could even imagine. It was a time of hope, of excitement, and probably, most importantly, edginess. And during that creative renaissance, a 16-year-old future developer named Zane began doodling in a notebook with all the ideas he wanted to put into a first-person shooter that he himself would develop. And even though that game would take somewhere close to 30 years to actually come to fruition, there's something to be said about staying the course. Because today, it is my absolute pleasure as your gamer dad to present and review Slayers X, Terminal Aftermath, Vengeance of the Slayer, which is being published by No More Robots and developed by Big Z Studios. Before we dive too deep into this video, I do want to note that Zane, the developer, reached out to me via Twitter and offered me a free code for Slayers X in return for me covering it on my channel. Now, when I got the message, at that point in time, I hadn't really been paying too much attention to the game's hype beforehand. As you see, based on the trailers and screenshots that I'd already seen, I had kind of passed the game off as a shitpost title that would maybe bring a few ha-has and offer some satire on the genre, as well as the extreme phase of the late 90s, but probably not much else in terms of fun gameplay. So yeah, I looked at Slayers X, I laughed at it, and I told him, yeah, sure bud, I'll take a free code, I'll review the game, and I'll have it ready by release, you got it. I went in with expectations low, but shit, holy shit! Kids, I say this as someone who has received no bribe to say this, no offer of compensation. Holy shit. Slayers X might be the best, most Duke Nukem-y build engine first-person shooter to come out since 1996 that has neither Duke Nukem or the build engine. Much love to Blood, though. I cannot stress enough how much fun I had while playing this game. So much fucking fun. Now, I'm about to do a whole lot of gushing and probably get ahead of myself, which I'm already doing. So let's start from the beginning. The game opens with a cutscene showing Zane, our protagonist, not to be confused with Zane, the developer. Although the online presence would suggest that Zane and Zane are one and the same, so you know what, I'm not going to draw any conclusions from that. Player character Zane is sparring with friends Mikey, Psyche, and Stephanie. The three of them together comprise the X-Slayers, which is, from what I can tell, a kind of edgy, extreme superhero team in the vein of 60s superheroes like the Adam West Batman, with secret hideouts hidden in plain sight and gadgets all over the place. Mikey Psyche, the leader, tells Zane that his power, something extreme called hack blood, is growing, but that he's not yet ready to truly wield it. Zane, of course, is none too happy to hear this, but they're interrupted by a news report stating that Zane's apartment building is under attack from their hated enemies, the Psycho Syndicate.
Everyone in the city of Boise. Stay safe, folks.
I'll go check it out. Stay here. You're not ready. You are too weak.
My mom lives in that apartment. I don't care if I'm ready or not. I must fight!
This just in, psychos blew up Zane's mom when she was driving her car home.
I must revenge her.
Okay, let's get something out of the way. Slayers X, Terminal Aftermath, Vengeance of the Slayer is not just a shitpost. Not just, but this is very much a shitpost game. But the level of shitpost quality on display here is right up there with some of Kino Fabino's best. Somehow, someway, Slayers X celebrates, satirizes, parodies, and presents a love letter to and of everything extreme and janky about 1998 computer gaming and edgy pop culture. Playing through this felt exactly like some of the crazy, exaggerated, super cool drawings I used to make in my own notebooks back in the day. The Matrix wouldn't debut until 1999, but there were big, loud, over-the-top, strenuous examples of cool gaming and films in the late 90s that we would see bleed over into the early 2000s. Slayers X in every way is a viciously well-written ode to that time. You wouldn't notice that because the dialogue is unintelligible. The poop jokes, turd jokes, fly left and right alongside yo mama jokes and calling goons lame. Zane himself dresses in oversized jeans with a wallet chain, carries dual pistols, has a single ear pierced, and sports spiky blonde hair. He speaks in a blend of hella cool new metal grunge and California surfer dude drawl. His mortal enemies, the Psycho Syndicate, are a near pitch perfect parody of everything Insane Clown Posse and Twisted, with several monsters sporting jester hats and one specific melee enemy which runs headlong towards Zane, screaming and shouting in a way that mirrors Jonathan Davis's new metal scat from Freak on a Leash. One of the weapons you get to pick up and use is a shotgun-like called the Glass Blaster, which literally fires shards of glass like buckshot. To top it off, glass shards are referred to as glass sharts, and the way to gather the ammo for the weapon is to break any and all windows you see, which drops glass shards everywhere for you to pick up and reload. Everything you get to see and interact with in this game feels like a calculated ode to a bygone era where everything was so edgy and cool and nothing hurt. And yet, it also feels like it is just self-reflecting enough to be able to take the piss and deliver some excellent mockery of that time as well. I absolutely love the hideously janky aesthetics here. Intentionally pixelated and compressed cinematic cutscenes will pop up at certain points during the course of the game, and while it's easy to write them off as simplistically animated and amateurish, the purposeful style of the cutscenes belies really well made, oftentimes surprisingly detailed animation that really highlights just how talented the devs at Big Z Studios are. This captures the jank 90s PC gaming CGI in a way that few games have ever done, replicated down to such a degree that you have to wonder if they busted out old copies of MS Paint in order to complete some of the art assets here. Another aspect of the game that highlights this is literally every single visual in the game. Holy fucking shit. A lot of you millennials out there who grew up during the height of 90s PC gaming and the glory of doodling and a Trapper Keeper can already see the appeal in these graphics, but just a casual glance here isn't nearly enough to do this game justice. Believe it or not, this game is running on the fucking Unity engine. I was almost convinced that this was the build engine. Like, it's obviously not, but running through these levels with the various interactive objects, the feeling of movement and combat, the animation style, the mix of sprites and polygons, I was swearing up and down that this had to be build. But holy shit, no, it's running on fucking Unity. The amount of work that must have gone into conjuring and replicating the kind of game feel and look that 90s build engine games had is too much for me to contemplate. And while I'm gushing about game feel, let's talk about the weapons and the combat. There are 7 weapons found throughout the course of the game. Up first are Zane's trusty dual pistols, which, if you notice down here, they have that little S symbol on them for the X-Slayers. Nice little detail. We have the aforementioned Glass Blasta, which is spelled Blasta, because of course it's spelled that way. We get a neat little crossbow that launches cans of explosive sewage, which is a fun little thing in that each can of sewage also contains a multitude of rats. So if the resulting explosion doesn't kill whatever you're attacking, the rats will pop out and scurry around to take a few nibbles out of your enemies. Did I forget to mention that all the rats in this game are friends with Zane and think he's super cool and you can actually talk to some of them? We've got a chain gun called the X100 Rapid Mutilator, a rocket launcher called the Triple Helix, which fires off a volley of 3 rockets at a time, and rounding out the arsenal are the 2 mystical weapons, the S-Blade and the Hackblood Talisman. Before I get into those last 2 weapons, I want to note that gunplay here is so fucking solid that I literally lost track of time, blasting away at psychos and jestas. The game might be fairly short in terms of actual length and time it takes to complete it, but the missions are so dense and packed full of precision combat that it feels like it lasts so much longer. Controls are smooth, weapons feel tight and accurate, you get a good sense of the sewage launcher's distance quickly and easily. The Rapid Mutilator might not be the most powerful chain gun ever, but it is satisfying to just lay into enemies in hordes. And let me tell you, there are fucking hordes of enemies. There were definitely moments where I found myself struggle busting my way through some of the combat encounters, spraying and praying and bunny hopping at less than 10% health simply because of the volume and variety of enemy characters that you run into. Variety is the key word here. Big Z Studios displays an understanding of how to deploy different enemies throughout a map. There's a surprisingly deft combination of melee and ranged and flying and environmental monsters that populate the various missions in such a way that you're constantly doing damage control and creating tactics on the fly. They're all similar riffs on classic enemy types that we've seen throughout FPS history, like the werewolves that carry rocket launchers but will try to melee you if you get up close to them, creating an incentive to try and close the distance rather than dodge incoming fire from afar. But it's the uniqueness of the character designs, the dedication to the aesthetics that makes all of these enemy types stand out and feel incredibly fresh. Now, getting back to the arsenal, some enemies will drop glowing green energy that will recharge your Hackblood meter, and this powers our final two weapons, the S-Blade and the Hackblood Talisman. Now, the S-Blade is a pretty standard issue melee weapon when it isn't charged, and it works well enough when you want to conserve ammo or you feel like circle strafing around some foes. If anything, the S-Blade feels like you kind of need to get a little too close in order to actually land any hits with it, but that's a minor gripe. If you get your Hackblood over 95, the blade will receive a charge of Hackblood energy, which will allow you to fire off 5 Hackblood shockwaves from the weapon, which is pretty neat and super useful since it'll slam through multiple enemies at the right angle. But it's the talisman that really takes advantage of the Hackblood meter, and oh boy. Throughout most of the game, I was really wondering why I couldn't maintain a charge on the S-Blade since I had so much extra Hackblood. You know, if I had that much at any given time, why wasn't my blade continually charged? Well, it's because the Hackblood meter is primarily for the talisman, which when you eventually find it somewhere around the halfway mark of the game, Zane essentially goes fucking Super Saiyan.
The S-Blade has a Hackblood charge. The S-Blade has a
One of the smartest design choices Slayer's X makes is to introduce the talisman in a mission where your Hackblood is constantly recharging, so you can go hard with these new abilities and get a good feel for how the talisman works before moving back into areas where you'll have to fight to recharge your Hackblood. Oh, man, the talisman is so fucking cool. This is easily the best implementation of superpowers in a first-person shooter that I can think of off the top of my head. And by superpowers, I mean absolute god-tier destructive abilities. The green fireballs that Zane conjures are effective on their own, but when you hold down the fire button and he Kamehamehas all over the place, draining your Hackblood meter over time, Zane rises into the air from the force of the blast, and it feels so fucking insanely powerful that I was cackling every time. You'll be incentivized to use it throughout regular combat, since some enemies will drop Hackblood charges, but you can't simply rely on it to cheese your way through the game, since not every enemy will drop said pickups. I never expected to walk into this specific game, and come out on the other end prepared to declare and defend the ridiculously tight balance of the weapons that you get to wield, but holy shit. There wasn't a single mission in the game where I didn't use every weapon that I had on me. Every weapon in your arsenal is useful throughout the entirety of the game. Each one has a situational use that keeps it essential for combat consideration. Nothing is too overpowered. Nothing is too underpowered. It's honestly pretty rare for a game to keep every weapon relevant and in rotation from start to finish, and like, you know, much like Cultic from last year, I'm having a hard time here trying to not just simply gush over this game. You know what I mean? Like, I definitely want to pick out specific things that I enjoy or love or go into detail as to why certain aspects of Slayer's X works, but goddamn, the game just works. And rather than point out every single little brilliant aspect of it or every hilarious visual gag, I kind of just want to drop this game into everyone's laps and go, here kids, have fun. Go play it and report back when you're done. Now, is Slayer's X Terminal Aftermath Vengeance of the Slayer a perfect game? No, not perfect. There are a few minor criticisms that, while not incredibly impactful on the game experience, were enough for me to frown just slightly. So we'll go over them real quick. Number one, the keybind menu just isn't expansive enough for modern gamers. There's no option option to rebind your mouse wheel, for example, so I was constantly fighting with my brain on which way I needed to scroll in order to go through my weapons. I'm the type of FPS gamer where I scroll down on the mouse wheel to pick my next weapon and scroll up to select my previous weapon. By default, Slayer's X has scroll up as next weapon, scroll down as previous, which is fine if that's how your brain is wired. Everyone's going to have a different way to mouse wheel through their arsenal, but not being able to rebind that was kind of frustrating and disappointing. Another key binding issue I had was that it doesn't list that F5 will quick save your game and that F9 will quick load. I spent almost the entirety of my gameplay experience hitting escape to go to the menu, to select my save file, to save my save file, and then back out to the game to start playing again. I hit F5 on a whim at some point in the hope that it would work. To my surprise, it did. It was a fantastic relief when it happened, but I do wish it was more apparent somewhere in the menu that this was, in fact, an option the whole time. Another criticism is that while level design is fun and tight for the most part, there were a few times throughout the game where I got a little lost, and the signposting of where to go next wasn't exactly very obvious. There's no auto map either. You have to collect pieces of the map in notebook pickups scattered across the map, which is fine. Not every shooter needs an auto map. I eventually figured out where I needed to find myself, and thankfully the game's adaptive soundtrack fades in and out around combat, so I wasn't just running around with some intense nu metal the entire time as I scratched my head and held down the shift key, running in circles searching for the key that I was missing. I'm genuinely hard-pressed to think of anything else off the top of my head that threw me out of the game and into critic mode. There's a few jumps here and there that are a little hard to make, but there isn't anything game-breaking. When I booted this up for the first time, I genuinely wasn't expecting a loving ode to the shooters of the 90s that were still using sprites and pixels, instead of following the trend set by Quake and shifting into fully 3D game engines. Nor was I expecting to play a game that was set in Idaho and has a map set entirely at the Boise Potato Festival. This map is hilarious. There's a shooting gallery, rockets blasting off, even a functional theme ride called Journey into Your Butthole that genuinely feels like a lost educational Disney ride that has to be seen to be believed. As someone who spent 4 years living in Boise, I can in fact confirm that this is an accurate representation. But on a serious note, this game is packed full of details, both large and small, that come together into a cohesive whole that genuinely had me hooked from start to finish. There's a clear passion on display for this game, for this world that it inhabits, so much so that when you complete the campaign, 3 bonus maps that had to be cut from the final game unlock and can be accessed in the first mission. There's even a running director's commentary on the maps where Zane talks about the inspiration for the maps, why they were made, and why they weren't included. My favorite one is a mission that travels through downtown Boise, featuring the Capitol building and the old penitentiary, 2 sites that Idahoans will know by heart. And look, honestly, I hope that Slayer's X does enough numbers to make it so that we could see these 3 maps completed and included in an update down the road. They're that good. You kids remember when Dusk first hit the scene and it looked and felt exactly like a lost first-person shooter from 1996, one that no one had ever heard of or seen and was somehow unearthed as if by magic? Slayer's X hits that same miraculous mark, looking, sounding, playing exactly like an FPS directly out of 1998, and it's just been waiting for someone to make a decent source port so it can be played on modern systems. The world is great, the soundtrack is great, the weapons feel amazing to wield, and Zane's one-liners are so bad that I was constantly giggling at them. Slayer's X, Terminal Aftermath, Vengeance of the Slayer is a game that surprised me so much that I've already gone back for seconds just to make sure I'm not hallucinating. And I'm happy to confirm that not only is it really that good, but it is an easy contender for Retro Shooter Game of the Year. I mean, any game that has a functional carnival ride that will take you on a journey into your butthole deserves at least a nomination for Game of the Year. Slayer's X, Terminal Aftermath, Vengeance of the Slayer gets a 9 out of 10. Now, I'm writing the script ahead of release, so I don't have a firm knowledge of what the final price is, but I've been told that it should be somewhere around $16. It took me a little over 4 hours to beat this game, and when you take into consideration the number of visual gags that I missed just from running through the missions, the various difficulty levels, all of the secrets, and the unlockable maps, I'd say that's a damn fine price. Also, the game ends on a really great tease that promises the potential of more to come should a sequel ever see the light of day, so I'm advocating spending the money on this so that Big Z can have that opportunity to serve up an extra helping of Slayer's X. I am floored. Well and truly floored, kids. This is a great game. A great fucking game. There's probably a variety of other tiny baby details that will no doubt annoy some other gamers. Maybe the setting might not be your cup of tea. And you know what, kids? Everyone's mileage is going to vary. I love first-person shooters that well and truly understand what a first-person shooter is and how it should feel. And I'm willing to overlook a little jank if the game gets that criteria correct. Let me tell you, I've rarely dropped into a game headfirst like this and been overwhelmed by just how passionately well-made it is. Part of me wishes that I had been bribed to give a good review, just so I could turn around and return the money and say, no, Zane, CEO of the X-Slayers, I'm going to bribe you. I'm going to bribe you to make another one of these games. Alright kids, I gotta get going. There are way too many games coming out this summer that I want to play, and I still have to get back on track with the History series. Remember, hike up your jeans every now and again, crank up that new metal on your car stereo, and stay hydrated. I'll see you next time.